Good afternoon. Those are indeed the facts that if enterprises don't adopt digital transformation, they are going to disappear because they will fail to adapt to the new world. My name is Nagi Prabhu. I am the Chief Product Officer at Icertis. And before we talk about 7 key ingredients of digital transformation, I think it is important that we set a stage as to what is digital transformation. I'm sure if I come down the stage and ask each person that question, what is digital transformation, I guarantee that there will be a different answer from every single person. In fact, ever since this question came up, it has become easy for me to answer the question, what is the meaning of life? So this is more difficult a question than the meaning of life. But whenever something stumps you, you always go to Wikipedia, right? So I went to Wikipedia and said, what is digital transformation? And this is the gist of what Wikipedia told me what digital transformation is. And what it says is that many years ago, I think many of us are old enough to remember, things were kept in a physical form or an analog form. And the disadvantage of doing that was obviously it was not easily transportable, not searchable, not analyzable, right? And then came the digitalization, where the things that were kept in physical form or analog form were converted into binary digital form, which made it easier now for you to search. You can easily transfer. In fact, I just transferred 130 MB of my presentation from my laptop to that surface in less than 2 seconds. That would not have been possible without digitization. And then once you have digitized the data, there came the digitalization. I know there is the words are pretty close by, but the digitalization is essentially building processes and flows and rules in terms of creating the digital form of the data. So basically, that is where the applications and workflows started coming in. And then the next phase is essentially the digital transformation. So when you do digitalization, the data will reside inside an application, and it is kind of captured in that application, and the domain of that data remains within that application. But when you go to digital transformation, now you are really freeing up the data and actually connecting that data to the entire world, whether it is a user, whether it is another application, and that is when the people's behavior start changing. That's when the new business models start forming. And if you are serious about digital transformation, what you need to do is figuring out how do you take your data from digitalization into digital transformation. That is the key crux of the problem when people talk about digital transformation. That is what people are trying to solve. And I think if you go to the Microsoft website, they talk about the benefits of digital transformation. So the benefits are, when you do that, is you are going to engage your customers better because the customers can access the data much more easily. You are empowering your employees because the employees have access to the data to conduct the business without waiting for it or without trying to getting approvals. You can transform your products, whether it is a electronic product, whether it is a brick and mortar product, doesn't matter. You get the insights that you need in order to transform your product, and you can optimize your operations because every employee, every executive has access to the data and all the related data to bring them together to make better business decisions. But along with these 4 transformation benefits, it also brings in certain expectations, right? So when your customers will expect that they want an individualized experience, they want it to be treated uniquely, they want it to be treated special, they need faster turnaround. The employees want more freedom in terms of how they work, how they collaborate, how they access the data. They don't want to be told to wait or for getting access to certain data. The transforming your product, you get the differentiated products are the expected out of you. And similarly, when you are optimizing your operations, your service levels need to go up, the cost needs to come down, and you need to be more responsive in every single thing that you do. But it is true that every data, doesn't matter which data, every data that goes through digital transformation has the potential to achieve all the 4 benefits that are mentioned here. It is guaranteed. Every data that goes through digital transformation can get these 4 benefits if done right. Now, what did Icertis do? Icertis chose contract as data that we are going to take through the digital transformation journey, right? So if you look at the contracts in how they went through the transformation journey, of course, we not long ago that we remember we used to sign on a paper contract. I think then came the digitized contracts where things started getting electronically signed, and then came systems that allowed you to collaborate on a contract. You can approve contract, you can reject contracts, you can edit contracts simultaneously. That's when the contracts became digitized. And what Icertis is doing is taking those digitized contracts and now making them digitally transformed. And what that means is taking the contracts, of course, which went through the digitization process and making them accessible to every single application, every single person, every single system in the company. And the reason the contract is important to be digitized is because it is the foundation of the data for an enterprise. So if you look at the video that I played earlier, it says every single dollar, you can look at any transaction in the company, every single dollar that goes out or in is governed by a contract. So it is important to transform the contracts through the digital transformation, and certainly Icertis is leader in the digital transformation of contracts. Now, above and beyond that,
spiking fever and left 16 days later with a stage 4 melanoma diagnosis. The oncologist that admitted me gave me my tumor report, and when my wife Jen asked him what we were looking at, he said, "I'll be surprised if he's here in 2 years." So after I was diagnosed, I had a lot of time for research, sitting in the hospital for 2 weeks and determining what my next steps were. I knew that it wasn't going to be just the regular standard of care. I had a 2-month-old son. I didn't want him to grow up without a father. And I was determined to find the best treatment that would give me a durable response. Reading the available treatments, knowing that there were dismal 5-year survival rates, it was discouraging realizing I had so few options until I started understanding the clinical trials had different drugs that weren't available to the general public. After realizing that clinical trials was likely my best option, we began looking at every available trial for a stage 4 melanoma patient. We've decided to get several second opinions and found a cancer center that offered a unique trial, and one that I became the first patient ever to get a series of therapies in a certain order. That, to me, was going to give me the best chance to watch my children grow up. My family and I found a very reputable research institute that offered clinical trials for melanoma. We journeyed there several hours from our house, met with the oncologist, and asked him, if you were 37 years old, if you had a small family, what would you do to get a durable long-term response? And he offered us trial A or trial B and said, I would do one of these two. Once we decided on option B for my trial, we were ready to go. The medical staff at the research facility let us know that there were some legal documents that were finished, that were just about finished being signed, and we should very shortly be able to enroll. I was being the first patient on the study. They were simply finishing the legal documents, and we went home, and we were ready to start the study that week, and we waited, and we waited. After several weeks of waiting, the oncologist finally called and said, the trial that you want to do hasn't got their contract signed yet. Maybe it's time to start thinking about plan B. I looked at the phone and said, there's no way, if you told me this is the best option for me to watch my children grow up, that I'm going to have to pass on it because a contract isn't signed. To you, this might be a document. To me, this is my life. And there is not a chance that I'm going to just let that go by simply because somebody somewhere has a piece of paper on their desk without a signature. After I got off the phone with the oncologist that day, the first call I made was to
So the contracts actually change life, right? There is a life depending on contracts, and that is what Icertis does in terms of contracts. And today we are doing that for all these companies that are listed here, including Microsoft. There are several companies who run clinical trial agreements through our system. We have companies like Daimler running their entire purchasing contracts running through our system. Leading services companies like Cognizant, Wipro running their contracts through us. So we believe that contract is very critical, and it was one of the data in the enterprise that was never done digitally, that had never gone through digital transformation. And that's why we picked contract as our key, and we have been very successfully doing that for many of the very, very reputed firms all over the world. To give one more slide on Icertis, who we are, before I get into the deep depth of how did we go about doing it, what did it take for us to take the contracts and digitally transform them, and the learning which you can take back and apply to any data that you can pick. So quick slide on Icertis. We are a company that was founded in 2009, and we have 8 offices worldwide, and we are about 450 people and growing. In fact, a year ago when I joined, we were under 200 people. We are more than doubling year over year. We are also doubling in terms of revenue year over year. We are one of the hottest enterprise startups, and we are considered one of the top 50 cloud companies to work for. And most importantly, I think we are very, very tight partner with Microsoft in different ways, in terms of Azure, in terms of machine learning, and many other areas. We are partnered with Microsoft from day one, and that has been a great benefit for us. So with that, I would go into what are the 8 ingredients of digital transformation. Before I go into the 8, there is a number 0, which I did not cover. The first thing you should do is you should bet on Microsoft Azure technology. That is your probably best bet in terms of getting your digital transformation process started. So above and beyond that, here are the 8 key ingredients that we felt are something that we did in our digital transformation journey of contracts that really helped us to get where we got. So let me go through one at a time here. The first one is access to the data in the application of choice. In the past, people said the bad UX kills productivity, and I think that is true. The bad UX kills productivity, bad UX kills adoption, but in the new world of digital transformation, good UX is not is a must, but it is not sufficient, because what researchers found out is that even with the greatest of UIs, if you have to context switch from one place to the other, then you kill the productivity by about 40%. That is the external research that has been done. So I think what is the most important aspect of digital transformation is how do you get access to the data in the application of your choice. So yesterday there was a conversation that Satya had in his keynote. Is he had a picture where there was a cloud and then there was edge. So the question is, how do you get the intelligence of the cloud into the edge? And the way to do that is you bring the power of the cloud, the power of the data into the system or into the applications of the choice. So in our case, we have brought the contract and the access to the contract and the data related to the contract in every single edge applications where customers work on a day-to-day basis. Make it an Outlook, maybe a Word, maybe a browser, maybe a Excel. In every single application, which is where most people spend their time, they have a way to access the data that is related to the contract, which is sitting in the cloud. I think that is the first thing that needs to happen is, of course, you have to build the greatest user experience, make it easy to use. But I think most important thing is bring the data to a place where people spend time on a day-to-day basis. The second, the self-service and collaboration. I think if I need an access to a particular data as an employee, I should be able to access it without jumping hoops. If I have to have access to it, give it to me, and if I have access to it, make me get it or let me get it without requiring additional approvals, additional access, sending somebody an email and they send me. So make everything self-service. It is a good thing to do, particularly in the modern workplace that Satya talks about. In modern workplace, the access to the data, whichever it is, if it is transformed properly digitally, will be accessible for every single employee in the workplace. And it is going to be not just accessible, it is going to be accessible in the right form, because a contract, a legal person looks at the contract in a different way than a CFO looks at it, or maybe a CEO looks at it. So if you are looking at bringing access to the data in front of your users, look at how they want to view the data and not provide a single view of it, right. So the most important aspect, or the second most important aspect we thought was make it self-service, make it collaborative, and bring in the things that are hidden in the data. Like, don't make me go look for that specific liability clause, which is what I am most interested in. Bring that liability clause to me if I am the legal person or the CFO. But if I am a sales guy, bring me the contract value data, because that is most important to me. So bringing the right data in a self-service way is the second most important thing that needs to be done in a digitally transformed world. The third one is integration friendly. If you recall the slide I had put together, we went from digitalization to digital transformation, and when you went through that digital transformation, that data is now connected to every single application, right. In the picture I had there, if you are a contract management system, if it's a contract data, it connects with CRM, it connects with ERP, it could connect with purchasing, it could connect with invoicing system, it connects to any system where there is contract data is going to be related. So, if you looking at digitally transforming the data, the thing that you need to look at is how do you make this data integration friendly, because if you don't make it integration friendly, the data remains in an island and that could kill the whole process of digitization, right. You will remain in the digitalization space and never progress into digital transformation phase. So, make it digitally integration friendly, so that any access, any application that needs access to the data is able to retrieve it, but more importantly, any other application that needs to put data in that along with the data, make it easy to do, right. It is easier said than done, because in the past such integrations were done through another third party middleware and those kind of stuff, but think about this integration as the key capability that you need to build from ground up in the application. The next one is device independence. I think there has been enough conversations have gone through how mobile is really changing the world. Think about that as your first priority, because today most people spend more time on mobile than on their laptop, and I think it is very critical when you are looking at transforming the data, how do you bring it to the mobile and in a seamless way. This is another important aspect. I think when people look at data, they think of applications and they say, how do I build an application to make that data? But I think the application days are gone. The applications are really passé, because if you look at what happened to the greatest of the applications that existed 10-15 years ago, we refer them today as legacy applications. If you want your application and your data to be not a legacy data, you need to think about how do you build the framework around your data that can actually go through transformation. So, if you look at other transformation journeys or other data in the enterprise that have gone through digital transformation, take it CRM customer data or employee data through CRM platforms. So, the CRM platforms, you do not refer to them as a legacy platforms, because they have been there for 15-17 years, but you do not refer to the CRM data as a legacy data, but you refer to some of the other data that was built in the past as a legacy data. So, most important thing is build a platform, not an application, and the key ingredient of building a platform is make it such that it can be evolved over time and it does not become a stale application that does one thing and one thing only, but it is configurable, it is customizable. When I say customizable, every customer or every user has a different need. So, make sure that the application can transform the data in the way you want. The next one is extensibility and personalization. I think this is another important aspect. So, particularly in our situation, in the contract situation, there is no two companies that have the same exact format for what they call an NDA or what they call a MSA. So, we had to think about how do you make your data be represented in a personalized way. Like for example, when you go into a regular application, based on your profile, you typically get a dashboard, and that dashboard tells you the 10 things that you have to know. But that is not personalization. How do you make it such that an individual person can personalize what he sees, personalize what he wants to see on a regular basis? I think that is the important thing, particularly with the millennials coming into the workforce. It is even more important because it is all about personalization. They are not looking at being guided in a way, they want to have an independent way of working. So, personalization is a very key factor of digital transformation of data. And natural language interfaces. So I think the keyboard is going to be extinct in another, I would say, 10 years, because the number of people who are accessing systems through voice commands and things like Cortana, Alexa or Siri is going to grow, and the natural language interface to do things is going to be the way people will interact with the data, no longer through a web UI or no longer through a web application. It is going to be done through natural language. So you need to think about how do you create a API layer that can be integrated into the natural language, and the natural language can actually interact with your data. So that is very, very key, because today that may not be the most prevalent, but that wave is coming so fast that natural language access to your data is very, very key factor. Last thing is AI driven everything. I think I don't have to specify more about it. Satya talked about how machine learning and AI is really changing the world, and AI driven everything. If you think that people will memorize the steps on how to use the data or how to use the application and do it repeatedly, I think that's gone. It has to be AI driven. So the AI needs to take the current situation, because how you deal with one, in our situation at least, how you deal with one contract is different from another contract. Like for example, in one contract the person might have changed liability clause. In another contract that person would have changed the termination clause, and the things that you do is completely different. Now if you gave him the same user interface, you are essentially making him to figure out what does he have to do when this thing changes versus when this thing changes versus when this thing changes. But if you create a UI driven flow, your machine learning algorithm would have figured out what he does when the liability changes versus what he does when the termination changes, and you give him the right UI or the right tool to do the right decision at the right time. So AI based system is going to be the way of how people will expect the data to be brought to them. The digitally transformed data will be all AI driven, and it will be shown in a way the user expect to see for that specific moment based on what he has done in his past. Don't make me do the same thing again and again. If I have done 5 times in one way, the 6th time make sure that I don't have to do that again. That is going to be the expectation, and if you are digitally transforming the data, you got to think about machine learning and AI as a key component of how you go through that process. So those are the 8 key things that we did when we went through the transformation of contracts through the digital transformation. And in fact, one of the I'm going to ask TJ, who is my colleague here, to actually show some of these transformations we have done and how we have surfaced them in our application, these key principles. But before I do that, I don't know how many of you saw, we announced this Icertis experiences for Microsoft Teams. I think that was one of the things I said in the first thing, is to make sure that you bring your data in places where people spend the most time. And MS Teams, Microsoft Teams, is released 6 months ago, and it is one of the newest innovations in Microsoft. And in fact, Satya started his keynote with the Microsoft Teams as an example, how people use Microsoft Teams to collaborate to designing a car. So before I show how we took advantage of bringing contracts into Microsoft Teams as an experience that people can have, I want to invite Julie here on the stage.
Great, thank you, Nagi.
Julie El Nuccio. She's a product marketing manager at Microsoft. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you. Great
How are you
to be
doing?
Here. I'm good. Good, thanks.
So, as I said, the Microsoft Teams has been on a tear. right?
Yeah.
A month ago that I was looking at the statistics, in the short period that you are there, you are number 3 or 4 in the biggest collaboration platforms that are there in the enterprise. Tell me, how are things going?
Things are great. Yeah, I can't tell you how excited we are about Microsoft Teams and to be talking to customers about it. This is our first big customer conference, and as you mentioned, in Satya's keynote, this is one of the major things that he showed. It's really front and center for our vision for the modern workplace. And the momentum that we've seen in just 6 months since we announced general availability of Teams has been really tremendous. We already have 125,000 organizations. That's organizations, not just users, but large organizations. And that number has more than doubled since we announced preview. So the momentum has been just really great, and our customers are seeing value in having this shared workspace, having one place where they can bring together their conversations, all of their content, and all the apps that they're using. We recently announced guest access. This was one of our number 1 most requested features. As I'm sure you guys know, when you're working in teams, the trend for teamwork now is that you're not just working inside your organization, and especially with contracts, you have to collaborate with people outside of that organization. And so being able to deliver those capabilities has really opened up the door for a lot of our customers.
Yeah, I really tip my hat off to Microsoft for pulling that fast. Now, you heard our announcement, how we are bringing the contracting experience into Microsoft Teams, right? How does that fit in Microsoft Teams' vision as to how digital transformation should bring data into the Teams in places like Teams?
Yeah, so Teams is, as I said, our hub for teamwork that really brings everything from Office 365 that people use every day, from Word, PowerPoint, Excel. But, we know that a lot of our customers are using a variety of apps and services to get their work done and to really drive business processes. And so to really deliver on, this complete hub for teamwork, we need to be working with companies like Icertis to bring in these services into this hub and really bring it in with that familiar experience. And so Icertis Experiences for Teams is a great example of that. The example you showed with the customer really brought it to life for me, especially the ability to collaborate efficiently and quickly on contracts. Really improves that cycle and improves that turnaround time. And so bringing that experience into Teams really makes sense and really enables that efficiency.
Yeah, I think the Teams is obviously one place where people collaborate and use. There are other Microsoft products also, right? So there is, and in fact, we have built experiences in every one of them, the Teams, Word, Excel, and everywhere. Now, how do they all come together? Because all of them are somehow related to Teams. How do they all come together in the overall big picture of Teams and the rest of the Office 365?
Yeah, so Teams is built into Office 365, so you have all of these tools. As part of the hub, you can access Word, right from within the hub, PowerPoint, right from within the hub. And the tool that you've built with Icertis Experiences really shows the breadth of our Office platform and the ability to integrate across those tools, particularly, as you mentioned, the needing to identify specific data for specific stakeholders within the contract using the Word add-in to be able to isolate that information and then bringing it into Teams so that you can really focus the right people on the right content and the right data is a great example of that.
Good. I'm glad that we have been able to be in the forefront of implementing the vision that you guys have.
It's been really exciting, yeah. And so I'd love to kind of understand from you, as we kind of think about the future and what you've already delivered with Icertis Experiences for Teams has been really great. What do you see coming up next?
For us, I think the user experience, making it easy for people to access data has been the mantra. And since I heard the intelligent edge and intelligent cloud yesterday, it has become even more enforced message for us, right? Because these tools are no longer just productivity tools. These tools are actually the intelligent edges, right? So it is not about that particular document, but what intelligence you can bring into these tools has been something that we have been thinking, and now it has been reinforced. So our goal is to bring as much of the cloud data, the contract data, into these tools that people use is our mission to go forward.
It's great. It's great.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you for coming up.
Thank you very much.
Now I want to invite TJ Madsen, to come up and maybe take us through some of the cool demos of how we went through the digital transformation, what we learned, and how we have been able to incorporate these, some of the key ingredients into the products that we have built. TJ?
Yeah, thanks, Nagi. Is this on? Yep.
Yes, it is.
Thanks, Nagi. Yeah, let me just switch over the laptops here so I can give you guys a quick demo, or two, or three, or four, or five. All right, so wake this guy up. So the first thing I want to show you, since we've been talking about it right away, is our integration with Microsoft Teams. So the way that we've thought about this is exactly as Nagi said. We want to bring the intelligence of our platform to the edge. And the edge can mean a lot of different things to different people, but we know that one place where people do their work today or collaborate or communicate with their colleagues is Microsoft Teams. And as companies adopt those platforms or those tools, they become pretty sticky. So people really end up spending a lot of their time there. You know, today you might be used to going to your inbox and looking through, okay, what is my to-do list for today? Now if I have Teams and everyone's on Teams, all my conversations are there. And if the conversations are there, we want to bring the data and the information and the contracts, in this case, into those conversations. So just to set this up a little bit, I've got a few different users who I'll try to have a virtual conversation with in front of you. But we would have had maybe a sales rep come in and create a contract. And with contracts, there may be some change that happened in a clause, and we need to get that approved. Now, the approval conversation usually involves a few different people. So just to set this up, Sally Sales has created a contract, modified the payment terms, and she submitted it for approval. So now, without going through all those steps in front of you, I'll start where we would integrate this with Teams. So Larry Legal has opened up the contract. He said, okay, I need to figure out if we should approve this. Does this make sense? So the first experience that I can really show you, as we call these the Icertis experiences for different Microsoft applications, would be our experience for Microsoft Word. So we've built an add-in that you can view a lot of the contract metadata and do a number of other more advanced features from directly in Microsoft Word. Now for a lawyer, Larry Legal, Microsoft Word is where he does most of his work. He doesn't want to log into other places. He opens contracts in Word. That's where he wants to do his work. That's where he wants to start his interaction. That's great. So we can allow that. So just to give you a couple of quick things, we have, of course, the metadata of the contract. Every contract, we want to know who is this with, what's the value of it, what are the dates that might be valuable here. But we can also keep track of the clauses. So I can see within my legal clauses, I see that my payment term, it showed red there for a second, but you can see the payment term one was the one that had a change to it. Now Larry knows that there's been a change here, but he wants to get some feedback from other people and talk about this in Microsoft Teams. So, yep.
So in the past, if he were to do this, he would have to switch from Microsoft Word because he wouldn't have the data. He would have to go to a browser and look there and then do side-by-side two windows and compare them.
Right.
So you essentially saved an entire context switching.
Right. He would have had to get out of this, go to Icertis, download it from Icertis, then go to his email, send it off to the email, make sure he attached it when he sent the email, and then wait for a response, or maybe call them to get their response back. There's a lot of different ways that you have that communication, and we're trying to bring it together. And especially for the companies that have adopted Teams, this is a powerful integration for them. So let me just kick it over to Teams. So I'll put it into the channel that we want to talk about it in. And then this conversation has now been moved to Teams. So you can see he made a post successfully to the Teams channel. So now I'll go over as Larry Legal in Microsoft Teams. So I'm using the browser version of Teams here just because it's easier for me to switch. But Teams has a desktop app, and people could even be viewing this on their mobile device as well, which is pretty handy too. So Larry is now posted into Teams. We have a channel here. We have a conversation started. And he said, here's the clause that needs to be approved. So the buttons are right there available for anyone else. But he can say, hey, I want Frank from finance to get his input here, because this is about the payment terms, and he knows best, or he'll at least have some advice for me. So Frank, what do you think about this change? So Frank is already talking with people in Teams. This is already where he gets a lot of his information, because the team is always using this instead of their email. But if we go down now, Frank gets an alert when someone mentions his name in Microsoft Teams, and he can come in here and see this. And then there's a number of ways that he can get more information about what Larry just asked him about. But he knows that the data and the details of the decision will already be in the conversation. So what do you think about this change? What change? Oh, the one that's right above here. Now, if I want to view more information, we can, of course, provide a link to go view it in the Icertis platform itself, which we call ICM. Or I can even view it from within Teams itself. And one of the capabilities that Teams allows for us to do is actually embed our application from within Teams and make it really easy to view things without doing that context switching that Nagi mentioned earlier. So for instance, I can view it in the Teams tab. And now we have an ICM tab in Microsoft Teams, which gives you that same ICM application UI that you'd see if you went to the browser version, but it's embedded directly in here. So you could go, for instance, click and see this deviation, or if there were others. You can see the comparison of the clause terms. And oh, yep, we saw that it changed from 50 days of payment terms to 90 days of payment terms. And that was automatically detected when the change was uploaded to Icertis. But now he can see that from within Teams. And he thinks it's probably something that we can approve. But he's pretty sure that Lisa from our legal department in Europe did something like this before. So Frank might say, Lisa, you did something like this recently. What do you think? Oops, typo. Great, so now the conversation has brought in a third person, and Lisa can come in and give her input. Lisa says, oh, yeah, I just did a contract like this recently, or I saw a clause that was deviated like this recently. This is no problem. But when Lisa joins the conversation, which I can pull her in here, or I can pull up her version of this as well, again, she's got the context of everything embedded right in the channel. So she can go up, see, oh, there's the clause. She can view it if she wants. She can open it in ICM. But she says, oh, I've seen this clause before. This is our standard payment terms. I know our standard payment terms are 50 days. This has been changed to 90 days. Yep, that's something that should be OK. So at Frank, and now Frank can go back. He says, great, thanks, Lisa. That's really helpful that I can get your quick input without having to email you or wait for you to call me back or use any other channel. We can all talk right here on the same conversation. And Frank can actually now approve it from directly within Teams as well. So we can use the approve button here. And it, every action you take from within Teams becomes a part of the conversation. So it'll also ask me, are you sure you want to approve it, just to make sure? And yes, I do. So this then continues on with the standard workflow that we would have had in ICM itself. But Sally, our original sales rep, will now get her normal notifications that she's used to from her normal interactions that she has with the ICM application, and she can continue on with this MSA and talk to the customer and have it presented. But the benefit of this is that the conversation to pull all these different people in and get their input about something that is a critical business decision can happen a lot easier, a lot faster, and in the place that they're already comfortable using. And just to give a couple other technical bits for those who are interested in the features about Teams, there's also this capability that we have integrated with in Teams called the Compose extension. So this would allow people to, we can create certain actions based on the context of different data that we have associated in Teams. In this case, I don't think anything's going to show up here now that I'm thinking about it because we already approved. But if there were approvals pending, and say there were multiple, we can use the Compose extension to actually pull in additional types of actions. And that's where we're looking to extend this capability in the future, to have more and more actions directly to be able to be taken from within Teams.
And I think also at this particular point in time, if Frank needs information like who else has to approve it, or show me which other contracts has this happened, he could actually use the natural language to interact with the bot and get all that information inside the team.
Yep. And I guess we can move to that as well. We have the way that we've built this, we can interact with our application as a bot, and when you talk to the bot from within Teams, it'll give you actions that you can use to interact with that bot. So I can use approve or reject or search. And we've also built bots for other applications. So this was another thing that I was going to demo, but I'll jump to it now because I think it kind of shows that we can make this interactive in a lot of different application platforms. So this is actually a similar bot that we have that now is integrated with Skype. And there's some basic tasks that we've built in for it so far, but I can start by just saying hello to it, and it will tell me what are the things that I can do with this bot. So I can get your pending tasks, search your agreements. Now a task in ICM is an approval, so we can think of it as the same thing that Frank just did, except for now it's talking to me personally. So I'll say, get my pending tasks. He says, great, I'll go look for that for you. And we can surface the same type of interactive functionality from within a natural language bot that can communicate with us. Now, this action seems to be going a little bit slow right now, but it'll come back and it'll tell me as TJ in this environment, what tasks do I have, and then I can interact with them. Yeah, here we go. So I have a lot of tasks that are pending on me in this environment. I have 45 things to approve, but I can do this directly from within the bot, or in this case, you can see I can even filter and say, only show me certain ones. But this is the power. Okay. Yeah, it seems having some issue right now. But this is the power of the bots that we that we can have interacting in a number of different platforms. So we've surfaced this same bot in Teams, in Skype, where we can get it in Skype for Business, in Slack, and other types of any platform that you might want to be using it for. And it all will be connected back to your same Icertis platform in the back end. All right, so I think that's most of what we want to show around collaboration
so far,
and bots.
In this entire demo of last 10 minutes, you did not go into ICM application. You did not log into ICM application. You are in Word, you are in Skype, you are in Team to get all these things done.
Yeah, exactly. And
so, what else do you have to show?
So the next way that we can surface the same information in other applications through the Icertis experiences is through our Icertis experiences for Microsoft Dynamics. So this is how we can, let me demonstrate for you the same experience except maybe for a sales rep. So if someone else is a sales rep, they're going to spend most of their time in a CRM. That's the backbone application for everything they do on a day-to-day basis. They don't want to leave that. They don't want to go log into other applications to do some of their day-to-day tasks. They want to do everything where they're comfortable. So, oh boy. Things like to time out. Let me just see if I can. Okay. So in a CRM, you have your opportunities that you're typically working on. And looks like my log got timed out. But here, this one's working. So I'll go to an opportunity. So I've got a customer at VentureWorks who wants to buy 4 million printers from me, and I want to, $4 million worth of printers from me, and I want to initiate a sales contract, or at least maybe kick up something off with our contracting team. So in Icertis, we have the concept of a contract request, because a lot of big companies, you might have a team of people in the back office that are going to help kick out these contracts. Now, normally, I would have had to log into Icertis, go create a new contract request, and do it the traditional way. But with our integration with Microsoft, or Icertis experiences for Microsoft Dynamics, I can do that from directly within Dynamics here. So looks like my laptop is not liking the re-login very much. But as soon as this loads, I can show you.
Are you having a demo syndrome today?
Yes. I think when you have 50 to 60 Chrome windows open, somehow laptops don't like that.
So let's go. So
Yeah.
basically what you're saying is that if you are in the Dynamics, you are able to create a contract request directly inside Dynamics, and then he doesn't have to log into ICM at all.
Right.
And then when day later or 2 days later, he can go into Skype and just quickly say, show me the status of the contract request I did.
Right.
Right? Are you going to be able to get it up?
Looks like it might be working. But yeah, you get the idea, is that we can surface our ICM contract request process from directly within Dynamics. And the sales rep doesn't have to leave where they're comfortable and where they know how to use the application. So let's see if it'll work here. All right. It's freezing. There we go. So I can see my contracts, first of all. So the contracts that may already exist or contract requests will show up from directly in the related data section in Dynamics, like those sales reps would already be comfortable using. And they can also initiate a new one. So all I have to do is click the plus sign here, and that will kick me out into a presentation of the Icertis platform from within Dynamics. So as this loads, it'll allow me to then create that sales request without leaving Dynamics. Yeah, here we go. So I'll create a sales request. Next. And the other nice thing that this does for the sales rep is it makes it so they don't have to retype any information. So all the information from my opportunity is automatically entered in here already. We have the contract value, we have the description, we know the customer, and it creates a link with the opportunity itself, so that if the rep is, the legal rep or someone else is in Icertis, they can see which opportunities are linked to this. And then, of course, on my opportunities, I can always see what are the contracts or contract requests that are related to what I'm looking for.
This kind of enforces the picture of how the contracting data is automatically integrated into all the CRM data, and that you can go back and forth between them without changing the context. This is how you bring in data into other systems that require access to that data at the time when it's needed.
Right. Yep, and it's not that people can't do that. I mean, we switch applications a lot, but I think it's one of those things that context switching does get you on a different frame of mind. It's like that other application I have to go and log into, and then while it's loading, I get distracted and I go forget and do something else. I think that's where a lot of those stats came from when Nagi talked about how 40% of your productivity can be lost just by switching the applications. It's that loading time, it's the unfamiliarity, I have to remember how to use this other thing. When you make it in the same application that they're familiar with, it makes that a lot easier and saves a lot of that productivity. So let me create this. And once this is done, we can see the contract request and view it from within the opportunity itself. And then the people who are familiar with ICM and the Icertis platform would continue on with that contract request from within Icertis. So one last thing I can show from within our Icertis experience for Microsoft Dynamics is that we can present the entire search functionality of ICM from within the application as well. So this is something that I think is valuable for sales reps as well. If I want to go search through existing contracts, I want to go see how did we write this contract for another customer, or when is this customer's contract coming up for expiration, or what are some of our high-value contracts that we might want to look for. They can search for that now directly from within Dynamics and don't have to jump out or go ask the contracting team to search for that for them. So looks like my connection is going a little slow again. But the idea would be that the sales rep can search for those contracts and get all the power of what we have in Icertis, in the Icertis platform, from within the application that they're comfortable with, in this case, Microsoft Dynamics.
So let's go to another experience.
Okay. So one of the other things that we talked about was the power of the platform itself, and the ability to extend the platform to a lot of different business applications that surround the contract. So one of the applications that we have that surrounds the contract is sourcing. So one of our main applications on the Icertis platform that we've just recently launched was our sourcing application, and that allows you to manage your entire end-to-end sourcing process around the contract from within Icertis. And so we wanted to show how we've integrated Icertis experiences for Microsoft Excel as a part of that sourcing application. And this seems to be going pretty slowly as well.
Sorry, having a
Yeah. All right, I'll try. Let's do this. I'm plugged in.
I think
It
looks like
just loaded. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is our Icertis sourcing application, and in this example, we would have put out an RFP or RFQ for a number of quotes from some list of vendors, and we want to be able to compare that directly. Now, when I'm looking at a big list of information and wanting to compare it, most comfortable place for me to do that is typically in Microsoft Excel. So we've built the Icertis experiences for Microsoft Excel to allow that to be easy. So in this case, I've created this RFQ, and I've got a bunch of responses. Now I want to download that into Microsoft Excel and get the data there and interact with it there. So what this does then is it pulls all that information from the different vendor responses into one document where I can do a comparison, and I don't have to find some, do the comparison from within multiple tabs within the browser, or have some custom application developed somewhere else to help me do this comparison in Excel. We have the Icertis experiences for Excel to make that easy.
So it not only makes it easy because people are used to using Excel, but a complex data structure like this, it's very hard to show that in things like a browser. So
Correct.
It is not only getting to the Excel, but getting the right tool to be able to experience the data.
Right. And the other powerful thing that we built into this is the ability to interact the other way as well. So I, of course, downloaded this, and it pulls information from ICM into the Excel, but I should be able to then also type in a review or a rating about these different quotes that we got back and have that be saved back so that we can continue the process from within the platform. And we built that into the experience as well. Then the final one that we have, experience that we can demo, is when we talked earlier about the need to customize the application for the user. So the CEO doesn't want to see the same information or doesn't care about the same metrics as maybe the sales rep or some subject matter expert or a contracting expert or someone like that. So the nice thing about the Icertis dashboard is it can be very easily customized for different users based on what metrics they want to see. So our dashboard itself is built around your KPIs that you care about and how you want to have the view look for yourself. And it's quite easy to change. So just as an example here, we can easily drag and drop different KPI blocks here that might be valuable for a given user, and they can choose what's the easiest view for them to log in and want to see. And then once we have that, they can also define new ones for them. So if I click on one here, RFQs for bidding, it takes me to the detailed list of all of those RFQs themselves. And I can actually maybe further customize this. I want a different type of KPI that's available that I can search for or that I can see when I log in every day. So let me just choose only those with a volume of business greater than 500,000. I'll just do that. We can see we get a smaller list now, but I want this to be a part of my dashboard KPIs every time. One other thing to mention here too is with all these lists, similar to the experience that you saw before of downloading all of the quotes for comparison, we can export any of these lists to Excel as well, which is quite powerful to be able to do all the same manipulation in Excel that you're familiar with, especially for these types of bids or RFQs that you typically want to analyze more deeply. So anyway, let me save this back as a saved search. And I can put this on my dashboard as well. So I'll call this RFQs over 500K. And I'll choose to make this available as a dashboard tile. I'll name it the same. And we'll save that. Great. And if I come back to the dashboard here, I'll just refresh it. And let me find that tile that I just created, and I'll save it. And that's how easy it is for them to customize a view for the KPIs that are most useful for them, so that when they log in, they see the critical information, they can click into it, get the details, and then continue to act on their standard business workflow. So these are the ways that Icertis has demonstrated how we're kind of living these 8 ingredients of the digital transformation. But we thought it'd be useful to demonstrate that and show you the power of what the platform that we've built and how it's really used those ingredients to make it a great business, the leading contract platform out there.
Thanks, TJ. Now, so to summarize, I think first of all, thank you, TJ, for a demo. I know we had a bit of an issue there, but what I wanted to summarize here is that the 8 metaphors that we have are definitely something that we have learned over the last 4 or 5 years. So if you are looking to go through a digital transformation, identify the data, what is the most important data that you want to digitally transform, and think about how you are going to apply these 8 principles that at least we have learned over our experience into your process. So that's all I have. I'm happy to take any questions. And before I do, Julie, thank you. You have been a fantastic partner and a great support throughout this process. Really appreciate your help. Any questions? Yes?
Two-part question.
Shoot.
With the integration into Teams, I'm assuming that for every contract that gets entered into the system, you're creating a different channel. Is that what I saw in that demo?
You could create a different channel by contract, or you could create because the channel is selected in the document, so you can choose how you want to do it. So we could automatically create a team per contract. We could automatically create a channel per contract.
So who would make that decision? Who would say this should be its own channel?
That is when you do the configuration for the Teams integration.
And then, so the second part of that question is, how are they secured? So, for example, I'm requesting contract ABC, and I can go to Teams, and I want to be able to view the conversations and that's going on for the contracts that I have access to, but I shouldn't be allowed to see other stuff that's in there. So is there a security model around that?
Yes. So today the security model, the Teams is still developing some of that, But today, what in our system, we have a security model where for each contract, we have a set of people who have access to it. We call it as team actually, coincidentally. So what we could do is, if we are going to create, if you want to implement that security model, for each contract you can create a team and you can add the team members that are there in our system into that team. So you have the same set of people accessing the contract.
It would still be a one-for-one
Yes.
based off of. Okay.
Correct. And once team has the security model where that the team comes to a channel, we could bring it to the channel level.
Okay. And the channel essentially would inherit the security from the team anyways, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly right. Any other question? Yes.
For the dynamic CRM integration,
Yes.
we have custom entities that we've added that we would like to use with the contract management integration. That I assume that we would install your solution as a managed solution and would have no issue with
No.
the custom entities.
No. So there are two things that I want to answer. The answer is, even if you have custom entities, it doesn't matter. The even more important aspect I want to talk about is that I talked about integration friendly. Now let's say you want to bring some data from your custom entities into the contract for whatever reason. It's a simple matter of configuration. You don't have to change anything. We have a configuration to say from these entities, opportunity, quote, and custom entity 1, bring these 5 fields into my contract. And it is just a click and complete, and it shows up in the contract like that. So that is what I meant when I said integration friendly, is make your application such that, because you can never predict how people use dynamic CRM. So you need to make sure that when you deliver some integration, it is easily click and through doable. The answer is yes, and in fact it is even more better where we can bring the data into contract management.
Yeah, that's great.
Sure. So this is best of both worlds, right? So many people want to use Excel and they don't want to go into CRM. So you could create an Excel template and you can connect through the Excel experience to ICM, and you can put the data directly through Excel, never have to log into ICM. Now, if you want to put that into CRM, that's a CRM's problem. We can't obviously have you create an Excel template and put the data into CRM. But if it is going into our contract management system, you can directly do it through our Excel experience. Does it answer your question? I can take it up separately one-on-one. Any other question? I don't see a big line. Thank you guys for taking the time. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll be here for next 5-10 minutes, so happy to answer any other question related to it. Thank you.